The Albanese Government pushes through a major chunk of its industrial relations legislation in a win just as Parliament finishes for the year. Virgin in last-ditch talks with its cabin crews to prevent industrial action over Christmas, and McDonald's zeroes in on 50,000 stores globally by 2027. Welcome to Fear and Greed Business News, Australia's best business podcast. It's Friday, the 8th of December 2023. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, after the show, you are speaking today all about salaries with Shay Peters, CEO of Robert Walters Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, I sure am. Shay is very interesting when it comes to the types of jobs where people will be able to get pay rises in the coming year and the jobs where they can't. We also talk about what artificial intelligence means for the workforce, but mostly it's really about how to actually get a pay rise and whether you can. He gives some tips about the areas where there's a softness in supply, really, and they're the places that pay rises will be bigger than others.
Yeah, it is. It's an interview with good value to it. So definitely check that one out. It's coming up a little bit later on. The main story this morning, though, Sean, a big story for us today. The Albanese Government has done a deal with the Greens and the Crossbench to pass the most contested part of its industrial relations overhaul. These are the labour hire laws, marking a big win for Labor, really just as Parliament finishes for the year.
Workplace Relations Minister Tony Burke yesterday said the government will split the Closing Loopholes Bill into two parts. The first tranche, including the same job, same pay laws for labour hire workers, which target arrangements used by companies including BHP and Qantas, passed in the Senate yesterday afternoon. Another bill with gig economy changes, casual conversion rights and minimum conditions for truck drivers will be debated next year. Now, according to the Financial Review, Senators Jackie Lambie and David Pocock confirmed they'd support the split, which will also include dramatically higher fines and criminal offences for wage and superannuation underpayments and stronger rights for workplace delegates. The legislation also makes industrial manslaughter a crime. The first tranche of the bill includes better support for first responders with post-traumatic stress disorder, discrimination protections for workers subject to domestic violence, expanded asbestos regulation to include silica, and closing a loophole where large businesses that go insolvent are covered by small business exemptions that avoid redundancy pay. So big news for the government to get at least half of this IR bill through Parliament.
So what's the reaction to the legislation been, Sean? I'm going to take a punt here, and just based on how vocal they were during the process, I'm going to guess the miners won't be happy.
No, they're not. I'll come to them shortly. The crossbenchers are happy, though, because for their support, the government has agreed to introduce reforms, including guidelines on independent medical assessments for workers. The government will also boost funding for the Fair Work Ombudsman's Small Business Advisory Service and initiate a review of the Comcare scheme to improve outcomes for injured workers. Over to the miners. The Minerals Council of Australia Chief Executive Tanya Constable did not hold back. She said the Albanese government had declared war, her phrase, against the resources sector, and the laws would render some mining projects unviable. She said the reckless, again her word, reckless behaviour looms as a tipping point and is an act of economic vandalism. Bang. The passing in the Senate is good news for the Albanese government, which has suffered in recent weeks ever since the High Court ruling against indefinite detention of immigrants. A fourth detainee over the past 36 hours or so has been arrested. The government has certainly suffered from that. Before we leave politics also, Michael, yesterday Albanese announced a deal to help fund PNG, Papua New Guinea's police and justice system, and combat gender-based violence in that country. He said it was essential to regional stability and the prosperity of PNG.
All right. Very big day in Canberra. Turning to the local markets now. What happened yesterday?
Well, the S&P ASX 200 closed down just a touch to 7,173 points, but that meant it held on to the really big gains made on Wednesday. Remember, Wednesday was up 1.7%, the best in a year. Held onto those gains. So yesterday was a pretty good day. The utilities and materials companies did best, while the consumer discretionary, healthcare and financials were sold off. Commonwealth Bank, National Australia Bank and ANZ were all lower. Westpac ended up a touch. Fortescue Metals jumped more than 1%, while Rio also outperformed. CSL and Telstra were both down around 0.5%. Goodman Group fell more than 1%. Aristocrat Leisure dropped about 1.5%. The tech leaders, REA and WiseTech Global, they both did pretty well, while Suncorp fell more than 2%. Also, just before we leave the markets, there are a few stories around this morning about a potential merger of Woodside Energy and Santos, the two big energy giants in Australia. If that happened, it would be the largest merger of major players on the ASX ever. Now, the stories talk about rumours. They've got plenty of outs. Obviously, there is nothing imminent, and maybe it's just investment bankers throwing their ideas around. But the fact that they're being printed suggests there's just a little bit of smoke on this one.
Oh, that's a bit exciting.
A little bit of smoke, yes.
I mean, any kind of speculation is just fascinating to watch, isn't it?
That's right. It is speculation, though. I must emphasise that.
Yeah, good point. All right. I won't get too excited just yet, Sean. Well, you've calmed me down successfully. What's happening in international markets?
Oil prices fell over the past 24 hours amid signs of growing inventories in the US. Brent's trading under $75 a barrel, close to 5 months lows. You know, because we do this show every day, I've gotten to the point where I read what's happening to oil prices and then I wait for a week or two hoping that it will come through on the petrol browser. Generally, it works. So I just don't think I can get through a week or two with the lack of petrol in my car at the moment. But
you just take up bike riding, or you just no longer accelerate. You only go places where you're heading downhill, and you just do it all in neutral.
Yeah, you always find yourself at the beach for some reason. Anyway, gold's trading around $2,025 an ounce. Bitcoin's at $44,000 a unit, and the Aussie dollar has fallen back a bit. It's trading just over 65 US cents.
All right, we'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, the states and the Commonwealth will contribute $10 billion between them to establish a new scheme to treat children with mild autism and early developmental disorders.
It's a follow-on from National Cabinet's decision on the National Disability Insurance Scheme on Wednesday, which focused on reserving the NDIS for those with significant and permanent disabilities. A review into the NDIS released yesterday argues for reforms that rethink the scheme. It says, and I quote, "We must return to the principle that NDIS eligibility is based first and foremost on functional impairment rather than medical diagnosis." The review also calls for higher standards of service and recommends measures to eradicate over-servicing and fraud. It also recommends the list of medical diagnoses that guarantees access to the NDIS be scrapped within 5 years. That is a very big change. Under changes agreed in National Cabinet, mild autism and developmental issues should not be supported by the scheme.
Sean, we mentioned this one at the top of the show. Virgin Australia and its cabin crews will meet today under the auspices of the Workplace Umpire in an effort to avoid industrial action during the holiday travel season. There's going to be plenty of people watching this one closely.
So the Transport Workers Union wants increases which Virgin says will push total salary costs, including super and payroll, up by 35%. But there's more. The airline says the union's proposed changes to rostering and allowances on top of the increases would inflate cabin crew costs by 63% overall. Virgin's cabin crew overwhelmingly voted in favour of the right to seek protected action earlier this month. They can now strike at any point after giving Virgin 3 days' notice. The airline has offered the cabin crew 15% over 3 years. The Fair Work Commission will oversee today's talks between Virgin and the cabin crews. They'll try and resolve the dispute, obviously ahead of Christmas. Virgin's also worried that the pay rises could trigger a major blowout in costs, not something it wants ahead of its expected float next year. Hopefully there is some settlement today. We do not need cabin crew strikes as we run into Christmas.
No, certainly not. Now, the top table at the Reserve Bank is looking more and more British, Sean, with a Treasury official, Sarah Hunter, being appointed Chief Economist and Assistant Governor at the Central Bank.
Yeah, so Dr. Hunter is originally from the UK. She's currently in Federal Treasury as Head of Macroeconomic Conditions. She is the second external appointment in the past fortnight following the appointment of Bank of England official Andrew Houser as Deputy Governor. He replaced Michelle Bullock, who was appointed Governor when Philip Lowe was not reappointed. So Dr. Hunter comes in as Chief Economist. Of course, the previous Chief Economist is Lucy Ellis. She's now at Westpac. Plenty of moving parts there, but more Brits heading to the Reserve Bank of Australia.
BHP boss Mike Henry has unveiled a major restructure of his management team, with the Chief Financial Officer and Chief Technology Officer both leaving the big Australian.
Yes, so that means there's a new Chief Financial Officer and a new Chief Technology Officer. There's also a new Chief Commercial Officer because that person shifted into one of those roles. And there's also a new boss of BHP Americas. Mr. Henry said the reshuffle was aimed at building organisational capacity. Another listed company to announce management changes yesterday was Seven West Media, where CEO James Warburton said he'll hand over the reins to current CFO Jeff Howard in the middle of next year.
Sean, one of the country's best-known radio announcers, former 2GB broadcaster Alan Jones, has denied accusations of indecently assaulting multiple young men and threatened legal action against the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age following an investigation by the newspapers published yesterday.
The former speechwriter for Prime Minister Malcolm Fraser has been accused of using his position of power to prey on young men, allegedly inappropriately touching them without their consent. Now, the report appeared in the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Obviously, all the media is reporting it. The Australian points out that in New South Wales, non-consensual sexual touches can result in a maximum penalty of up to 5 years imprisonment. Jones' legal team at Mark O'Brien Legal released an initial statement saying, "Our client denies ever having indecently assaulted the persons referred to in your letter, and your suggestion that he has is scandalous, grossly offensive, and seriously defamatory of him."
Okay, one more before we get to international news. And fund manager Perpetual's share price surged 7% yesterday after the group rejected a $3 billion bid from Washington H. Sol Pattinson.
Perpetual's board said the bid undervalued the company. Sol Pats, which already owns 9.9% of Perpetual, said it wants to break up the fund's management business. The bid came just hours after Perpetual said it's exploring a demerger of its asset management unit from its wealth and corporate trust business in an effort to unlock up to $1 billion of value. Earlier in the year, Perpetual bought fellow fund manager Pendal in a $2 billion transaction, though that deal has struggled to win friends, starting to look fairly complicated, that sector.
Yeah, it certainly is. All right, turning overseas now, and Elon Musk's SpaceX has commenced discussions about selling shares at a price that values it around $175 billion or more.
If the company wants to issue shares to staff, it needs to value itself. That makes sense, right? So a few months ago, it was valued at $150 billion. That's now risen. The higher value would make SpaceX one of the world's largest companies. In fact, it would be in the top 75 biggest companies by market capitalization, about the size of Nike, according to Bloomberg. SpaceX dominates the market for commercial space launch services with its Falcon rockets. SpaceX also sends payloads to orbit for private sector customers, as well as for NASA and other government agencies. SpaceX also operates its Internet from Space Starlink service, anchored by a growing constellation of satellites in low Earth orbit. Plenty of Australians use that service.
Have you ever seen it yet, Sean?
No, but you have told me about it.
I know. I tell you every time you mention Starlink about the time that I witnessed it, and I'm waiting for you to see it because it is really quite spectacular.
It's pretty cool.
You just look it up. Get online, you search for kind of Starlink tracker or something like that, and you can actually just head outside and witness it going through the sky. And it is just, you just look at it and just go, yep, that is cool. Regardless of what you kind of think about Elon Musk, it is a spectacular feat of engineering.
Yeah.
The fact that they stay in such a straight line.
Amazing.
There's more to it than that, I'm sure, but it's just such a nice, neat line. Anyway, Sean, McDonald's Corp wants to have 50,000 locations globally by 2027 as the fast food giant starts on its fastest expansion surge in history.
Yeah, so it currently has 41,000 restaurants across the world, including more than 1,000 here in Australia. It wants to open 2,000 more in the next month. Some of the new restaurants will likely be delivery or drive-through only, but the vast majority will have the traditional McDonald's format. Sales at company-owned and franchise stores will hit $130 billion this year, of which about $50 billion is in the USA. Now, the chain's added 5,000 restaurants in the past decade. A lot of that growth's in countries like China and Brazil. It's also investing in its core menu items. Did you know that chicken now accounts for $25 billion in system-wide sales? That's the same as beef at McDonald's.
No. Really?
I asked my son about it. He goes, yeah, the nuggets.
Oh, the nuggets, absolutely. Yeah, you can get a 20-pack and it's just, yeah, okay, I get it.
Right. I haven't eaten at McDonald's for a long time. I didn't realise they had nuggets.
Oh, everyone knows about McDonald's nuggets,
Yeah,
Sean.
I did. I just didn't realise how popular they were, though.
Oh, they are kind of the nugs.
The go-to, right? The nugs. McDonald's is also looking to increase users of its loyalty program to 250 million 90-day active customers by 2027 from about 150 million currently. That's quite the loyalty program. 250 million users. Do you know that loyalty members in the US and Canada at McDonald's spend twice as much on average as other guests? I mean, it's not surprising they want to add numbers to their loyalty programs. Anyway, McDonald's is obviously doing very well.
I don't think I've ever learnt as much in a single story as I learnt in that one. Did you deliberately cram it with as many facts as you possibly could?
I mean, McDonald's obviously is a phenomenon and has been for 50 or 60 years. I just didn't realise how big, 50,000 locations globally.
Yeah, that is huge. All right, last one, Sean. How about this? Spending more than 2 hours a day in meetings can hurt productivity, according to a new survey, with people stuck on Zoom calls and in conference rooms for over that time, less able to concentrate. I'm trying to keep the glee out of my voice as we discover this.
The survey of more than 10,000 desk workers globally, including from Australia, from Salesforce-owned Slack Technologies, found that 2 hours of meetings was the tipping point for most. Those who said they spent too much time on Zoom calls or in conference rooms were more than twice as likely to say they didn't have enough time to focus on work that matters. More than half of executives polled said they had too many meetings, while 27% of rank and file workers said the same. Now, the effects are the same whether the meetings are virtual or in person. No excuses there. The other finding, which I think is a little surprising, was that a small slice of the workforce, typically younger employees or those with less than a year on the job, think they spend too little time in meetings.
Really?
Adam Lang.
Goodness me.
Full stop.
Oh, well, we will be drawing his attention. You know what we should do? One of us should use this in the weekend edition tomorrow.
I'll take it. Yeah, I don't care what it is. Remarkable sleeper. Best story possible.
You'll fit it into one of the categories, and Adam Lang, who is our judge in that, he'll love it, won't he?
Oh, he will. Although, I might make it a sleeper. This is the beginning of the end of the meeting. He'll hate that.
Oh, that's clever. You know he does listen to every episode, so we're planning this now, and in 24 hours when we go to do the weekend edition, he will have heard of all of our secret plans.
Right. Okay. Let's just move on.
Okay. Up next is the Fear and Greed Daily interview with Shay Peters, CEO of Robert Walters Australia and New Zealand.
All about where the biggest pay rises are coming from, also what artificial intelligence means for the workforce. It's a great chat with Shay.
Yeah, it's coming up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael. I'm pretty excited. Only a couple more weeks till Christmas.
Oh, it's good. It's rapidly approaching. And as we found out yesterday, none of your Christmas gifts are going to arrive in time.
No.
Sorry, I shouldn't be laughing as I say that. It's just
Christmas +3.
Oh, golly. That's Aylmer timing for you right there. It's Friday, the 8th of December, 2023. Make sure you're following the podcast and join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, X, and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed Business News. Have a great day.